Thank you very much for this nice invitation to present the topic of creative methodologies here. I think in the field of action research, creative methodologies, of course, are important, especially when it comes to systemic cross-sector research and when we try to connect different parts of the world and when we try to really bring different stakeholder groups together, which is not easy, as we know, because it's all connected to different mindsets, to different ways of thinking, to different worlds people live in and institutional contexts people are in. And so this means quite a lot regarding collective change. So we should never forget it's a quite complex endeavor to do so. And so that's, I think, very important, the how of research as well as the how of making or creating change is always the method or the methodological question. Methodos in Greek is the way, so it's just the path to take. And so that's interesting to see and have a look at this level because it's so crucial for making change happen and making as well connected research happen. So I'm going very briefly talk a little bit on systemic cross-sector research and innovation here. I'm going to address then the methodology of cross-sector organizational research and innovation approach and really go through different methods, in fact, to really which go in a different way and address the topic from a different angle and really present those different possibilities to use and to make use of for action research. And then I will, in the end, talk a little bit on the advantages and as well the challenges, of course, not only advantages, but talk a little bit as well on what is maybe as well critical spaces to talk about when you talk about the nexus of the professional world or the practice world or the institutional world and the academic research world, which is different interests, which is not identical, of course, and which has to be matched and connected somehow. So I'm going to talk about this again very briefly. So, what we talk about when we talk about cross-sector innovation, that's just one example, could be millions of others, and we have just talking about one now, talking about the agricultural field and alternative farming approaches, and we could have any other field. We have the spillover topic. So any field, the education field, any field we're addressing actually nowadays, the medical field, the healthcare field, any field we're addressing is, if you think it's systemic, in a systemic way, is a multi-professional, is a multi-actors field. So any field is one field where different stakeholders have to come together in order to create change in a systemic way. So, and how can we interlink those different actors and institutions for systemic solutions? Well, this example, like interlinking organizations and professionals, is in the field of bringing single and educating mothers, so single parents into professional activities and just to help them to get back into the labor market while having children and while having to educate them alone. So this is just this one small example of that you might connect to. We have legal frameworks there where all the different institutions come in, whether it's related to employment, whether it's related to child and youth protection, whether it's related to consultancy and counseling, whether it's related to educational institutions, associations, and in economy, the employers, the daycares, and you would see that's just with one topic, with one critical field of action, and not going along the pillars, how our institutional life is normally organized, but just going cross-cutting, a problem-oriented approach always would mean just take the most critical issue and come from there and see who should be connected and who should be taking part in this field, because it's so challenging, and normally our institutional life, unfortunately, is not organized following the social problems or the social solutions we need to create, but of course following institutional structures which have been developed following disciplines, following other logics. Now, systemic logics need other ways of addressing problems of our time, as we know, and that's the reason why we just actually, in action research, we try to bring all those actors, those stakeholders together, either for change-making process. We have just heard it in the field of agriculture and transformation there, and as well in the field of research. Of course, we can create new learning approaches for research itself, and to really come into systemic approaches of doing research as well, and of course as well gathering a new quality of research data, which is inter and transdisciplinary research data we can gather from there. So if we have just a small look into research strategies and research methodologies in the field of where I am in organizational education. So how can organizations, how can institutions, how can institutional networks change or develop or emerge? Then we have, of course, a whole range of the traditional empirical research set with, of course, the traditional, we heard quite a lot of quantitative survey studies, but the most, of course, let's say that the path to be taken in just change-creating efforts is as well qualitative approaches, very much, which of course can be combined with quantitative, large-scale assessments and data, but just if you want people meet and reflect and learn, then of course qualitative approaches are extremely helpful. So what we have is multi-perspectivity is what is given in any of those network cases, so that we need to address multi-perspectivity there, and that can be done in a research methodology with triangulation, with mixed methods, so to use, maybe combine quantitative and qualitative approaches, so be it surveys, and combine this with qualitative approaches like interviews, like group discussions, or as well large group interventions, what we will be addressing next. And I really go for, there's a whole methodological debate on triangulation and mixed methods, of course, to really how can we ideally integrate those different approaches, and how can we interlink this multi-perspectivity here to create the most qualitative and values of data here. We have then, of course, the whole trend here of participative orientation, and this is here that's highlighted the multi-perspectivity, because this is very important for the field of large group interventions. So that is one basic criterion. You have always multi-perspectivity, because in large group interventions, where you bring all those stakeholders together, anyway, you have multi-perspectivity just in the group of people sitting there. That offers as well the potential of creating different kinds of data. And you have then, of course, a participatory orientation is there, because it's the nature of action research to go for dialogical approaches on the one hand, to allow participation on the other hand as well, see how can that maybe as well vice versa process between research and the practice field. So that would be one basic element. As well, we have aesthetization, design research, in that sense that you, as well, an element of large group interventions, to bring many stakeholders together, to have them, the system in the room, and to let them work in small group in those stakeholder rounds and settings of like focus group settings, let's say, but multiplied in one group, in one room, and so you can have there 100 or much more participants regarding relevance of the topic. So we would have there aesthetization in the field of that is experience-based approaches, that you could even do research theater, so let people play critical situations maybe, or let them play just like a role play or so, vision models or whatever. That could be, so that's a trend in research in general, to go for as well experience-based aesthetization approaches, which could be as well visual approaches, which we have been talking about in the other session today, and as well use the vision-oriented approaches, and as given nowadays for design and shaping, and at the same time as well for analysis and academic research. So the qualitative I've already addressed here, so that is given, of course, qualitative in general, the whole range we have in the classical field of empirical research. And of course we have much more coming up now, the process orientation, so longitudinal studies over time, to really see some T1 to T10 maybe, so the time points to really make long-term changes visible and analyze this. So this is something which is, of course, then a much longer time frame you need, but still this is a trend at least we can observe in the methodological debates nowadays. And the other aspect which will become here interesting, historicization, comparative orientation, to see what's the experience based in a historical view, and as well in the view of to compare different organizations maybe, or as well countries. Now depends on the level what you compare, whether it's the national systems, whether it's organizations, whether it's regions, so that can be different angles which can be taken there. Now, this is just the broad framework. As I said, the large group approach and the action research approach focus here on the multi-perspectivity and the multi-method, mixed methods approach. The focus here on the participative orientation, and the focus very strongly on the aestheticization, the design research world. And of course, it is all in all, it's quite strongly connected to the qualitative world. So, let's have just a quick look at the systemic paradigm we were talking about earlier already, and just to see what is the underlying assumptions in the field of large group interventions, which comes from the consultancy field and from the organizational development field, which is making use of now as well for academic research, or in the combination of action research. So you will have the shift from a sequential approach, from just having some parts of the system in the room, or from a problem-oriented approach, or from the control-oriented or expert-oriented approach, shifting into the system paradigm. And that's what we find in the whole world as well of platform-based strategies. I spoke about research and innovation platform strategies, which are now underlying the whole program, third-party funding, and program-based research and innovation approaches nowadays. So really having a big shift into the system paradigm in this field. And so that would mean get the system together in one room, let it develop the topic, so develop the field in a certain open space logic. We will see that the different approaches do that in a different way, and but it's in general, it's always that the expertise is in the field. So what we learned just when our colleague here had his last presentation, that is really the knowledge emerging out of the field, and not just expertise, not just only in academia but in the context, and to really go in this sense for rapid change and for the assumption that knowledge creation is a collective endeavor, and not just something drawing out of the field, but just enriching environments. And that means that you have a circular production of insights, as well self-reflection of the system itself. So it's not the researchers doing the analysis of the field, but the field itself researches itself, it analyzes itself in this sense. So it's a big shift of rationality here. In the whole actual theoretical debate as well on the role of universities now shifts into this, that universities actions that was universities where is taking place now in the whole society, because everybody analyzes now. Everybody goes into the diagnosis what is given there. So this is the typical picture you would see how those practices would be undertaken. So you would have the focus group setting of just a circle of 5, 6, or 7 or 8 people sitting together. You would have to replicate this in a room, in a big space, and that could be, as I said, large group interventions from 30 to 5,000. That you have experienced that up to 5,000 people have been doing this. That has been taken place in the US, in the automotive industry, of course, and then in huge fabric halls where you have the large-scale production there. You see that it's the aesthetical processes here, people working with image-based approaches, just emerging knowledge out of ideas and out inner knowledge emerging there from inner images, from mental models, and all this can be used very, very productively for collective processes, either of analysis and of change creation too. Oh, now, so we have to move this in here. That's the 4 major, there has been more of course, but this is the 4 major paths to be taken, because they differ systematically as well, how they address the topic of large group intervention and how they address the topic of systemic change and action research. So see, in general, this was the way, as I said, here we have all those light focus group settings replicated in one just big room, and they all can cross interact because they can be combined following heterogenical combination or homogenical. So it means in the field of education, maybe all of the teachers could sit together in one session, and then they would have a homogenical setting. And then, of course, in the next one, heterogenical, they could sit together with parents, with children, with school kids and whatever. So we would have a heterogenical setting. So you have not, wouldn't ever stay in your small group there, in your focus group, but you would always mix and intermix and change. And how this is done differs by method, and as well, anyway, the rationalities of research methodologies here differ according to different principles we will show and see now. Open space technology, real-time strategic change, future conference, and appreciative inquiry in large-scale large group format are the major ones. There's others like World Cafe. There's a huge set in the meantime of those approaches coming up, which not necessarily all differ fundamentally, but sometimes it's just consultancy firms bringing this up and just putting their own logo or putting their own approach and naming it just a little bit differently. It's not necessarily always fundamentally different. But the difference of those approaches here, principles differ regarding, is it open or is it pre-structured? That would be one basic difference of those approaches. So open space as an approach would say we don't need any agenda apart from a major topic, a general topic which is relevant to us. So if it would be the sanitation field, for example, then you would feel to bring all the actors relevant in this field together. Or the education field, you could say, we want to have our schools better, or we want G&H teaching get more relevant to us, or we would learn to how that could be just done. Practice, but you could bring all those different actors together and have them there. Just have this one topic, and then have a really open space, and have below this is just a very, very broad frame, and then you would have self-organization, pure self-organization over half a day or up to 3 days. You would have people there sitting in a big circle first, and then spreading out into groups, because they would just all say, what's relevant to me? So what, under this special general theme, what is relevant to me, which kind of topics I would like to address, and you would just run those workshops. People would self-organize and have the agenda there on the wall, and people would say, oh, I like to do this topic, I come and I share, and we co-create together and we develop solutions. So it's very, very open, and this means people go where their heart is, where they're motivated to do and to contribute, and it's a high level of energy in general, because it's the basic pattern here is freedom, and that's highly effective, incredible. So that's an entrepreneurial approach, by the way, to some extent. So you could do it with any amount of participants, from 5 to 500 or 5,000. It's just a complete open access approach, and that's the basis. The basic pattern is as well. It should be always voluntarily. It should not be forced. So people should be able to choose and to come and to do. In general, people like it very much to work here, and then the system analyzes itself. And of course, you, as a researcher, you're just in the position of observer. You don't have to do anything, because any data are created by the field itself. It's just the easiest way to gather research data you would ever imagine. You don't have to take anything. Of course, you can do it additionally. You can do interviews, you can do additional things, because all the groups will develop. They will write charts, they will contribute, and there is as well in this method always by the conference participants generated documentation. So any of those workshops will produce a report in order to stay connected and to produce results into the future. They do a project planning for the future too. So this is as well kind of sustainable in the sense of going next step and going further. So there's another methodological principle I just want to show you, which is the complete different approach here, which is the approach of the Future Search Conference, which just goes the opposite because it's absolutely pre-structured, and it's a 2.5 day method. You can use it, and it's quite clear that there is those 5 steps. You go from a history of the social system into the future of the social system in those 5 steps, and you take the multi-level approach here to have what is the global changes we have been facing, what is the changes we've been facing in our fields, or maybe education, or agriculture, or sanitation, whatever, or water systems, and you can address this at the 3 levels, and as well the 3rd level, the personal level. So this addresses as well really multi-level in this sense to us. So what do we experience? And then make people connect. So all those methods are based as well on the idea of connect the field as a field of social actors and of individuals, persons who you should get in touch with each other, because only then change will happen. Get out of the shoes of being in the function, get into the shoes of being a human being and get in touch with each other, and then people start to learn. And that's why the personal level is so important there, that people share as well. Who am I? And so trust is raised by this. And this multi-level design here, there's quite a lot of aesthetic transformation going on, because they visualize in the process what would be the best of ever possible outcomes by co-creating kind of models, and they really do work with their hands, or they paint themselves, or they create something. You would think, oh, we're not in kindergarten, but it's not related to kindergarten, of course, but it's really playing and stepping out of just the given situation and of the present, and imagining and playing a little bit with potentials and possibilities. That's the basic idea, which is in general as well very helpful in order to create common ground in the system, which of course has to develop to be a system, which is not a system as such in the beginning, but there's all representatives coming from different institutions, and they don't feel as a system. But this has to be created, and this is created within this process of 2.5 days. So now we have the next one, which differs coming from problem orientation. This as well, of course, is a major difference. You can take a distinct category of analysis. It is a problem-based approach, and on the other hand, we have a solution-oriented approach. We'll see this next very briefly. So the problem-oriented approach, which would be, as an example, the real-time strategic change, RTSC, sounds so complicated. There's another version of it, is whole scale. It's as well a systemic approach. All of those methods have the goal to initiate simultaneous change, go over the course of 2 or 3 days, bring all the participants together, again from 30, 40, up to several thousands as possible. And here, what is here critical, and you see the difference to the pictures we had before, here the management level will be there. In open space, it's quite egalitarian, the approach. You wouldn't see any formal distinction. We said every participant is in a circle. So the idea of the open space is really the circle. So in a circle, nobody is different to the other. There's no hierarchy represented. Here, hierarchy is represented. That's why the private sector loves this approach very much. Because it's acceptable, because it fits to their world, because it fits to their mindset, because it makes them feel secure, because it's what people know, what they feel is right. I mean, the management loves to have a little bit of control. So they don't want to be just equal in a circle in general. They really feel a little bit to lose control. So this is easier for them. They have to check. So there is a management level, and it is represented. And the management says, hey, people, we have a problem here. We have to solve this. And really get into the participatory, a whole scale range of addressing, where change is needed, and to really address this from there, and then go into the solution-oriented approach over steps, of course, but start with confrontational approaches that can be even to really go into the hard storytelling of what are the hidden agendas here. The hidden agendas, what is not to be told about, what is really secret, what is really underneath and undercover, and just now let's speak about this. So this is a really confrontational and problem-oriented approach, and if it's done well, it can be really good, have a healing effect to an organization or a network, to go into the hidden agendas, which are so crucial in any setting. Now the fourth one, as I said, is the approach of solution orientation and starting with solution orientation. That would be the appreciative inquiry approach to be done as well in a large-scale setting. And you would have, again, 1 half day or up to 3 days. We could work on this, again, with a broad range of participants possible. And you would you could do affirmative inquiry before the large-scale setting, asking in an organization all the different participants, or you could do it in the setting itself, having just a small inquiry, just a small positive affirmative inquiry in the sense as a term, affirmative social research to ask what is the best, what we have in our experience right now already. So where is the little nugget of gold in the sand of our stream here? The daily life, not everything is gold, but there is maybe this nice little nugget we can tear off there and say we want to have more from this quality here, and how can we raise this quality, how can we develop this further on, how can we make it real, and how can this be strengthened so it becomes a vision, and not only a vision but a reality for us. Good. So this would be the 4th model, and I think I should leave it with that, because anyway I think the 4 models are quite interesting. I can provide you as well later on with the material. As I said, the aesthetical approaches. We can use anything which is there in the field of collages, of picture cards, of photo-based approach, of scenic, artistic interventions, video recordings, anything you can think of, can use for those change processes. And then is, of course, just to maybe leave it with this, it's in that sense responsive, it's a constructionist approach for research and innovation, and it's, of course, as well you can be, as a researcher, observer, and then the system organizes itself. But you can, of course, be as well in the connection pattern of going in interaction and reflect. And you can analyze the past up to the development of the future. Good. I think the advantages are very clear. It's simultaneous change and exploration. You can include quite a variety and a lot of different approaches here. You save time and cost, you get a high quality of data, you have a transformative power there, and it's now the critical aspect about this would be how is the nexus between research and practice organized. So maybe we leave this for the discussion if anybody wants to learn more about this. Thank you very much for your attention. I'm happy to go into discussion.